Hey, welcome. This is week 10 of WDD 130. We have a new topic, HTML forms, and there are three activities that we need to complete. The first one involves careers in web design and development. I ask that you look at the calendar for the due dates. All three activities, as shown on Canvas, show a March 14 due date. Okay, look at yours. Yours may differ if you're watching the screencast. Most of you, watching it now, need to submit your work by Saturday, March 14th. So keep an eye on the calendar. That's just 3 days away. Okay. So if we look here, careers in web design and development involves you looking at some salary.com information on web careers. You'll notice the average salary for jobs that require these back-end and front-end skills is 6 figures. It's $111,000 based on the national average in the United States. There's various jobs. We see some titles are called content engineers, 1, 2, 3, internet applications managers, and even those who can develop with Java. Okay, I encourage you to look at more of these opportunities for web development. And this is just one resource you can use to learn about those. I ask that you prepare a simple short response to the following prompt. What did you learn from the websites on careers in web design and development? And then, secondly, what did you learn from this class in general regarding web careers? If you monitor your final word count, okay, and note that as the text entry, I would appreciate that. Essentially, this is a rubric for how I will grade your work. So I will evaluate the prompt. I'm looking for a deep reflection on this question. Make sure you answer that. That's worth a whopping 9 points. And then the word count, please just declare that because it should be at least 200 words. So please write in complete sentences, use good grammar, spell check, proofread it, and do your best to write your response in as many as 200 words and include that just as a footer for your text entry. Moving on from that discussion and reflection, we will work with HTML forms. And these are very important. This is a super important topic because sometimes you need to gather input back from the users for the website. Perhaps they submit a form, they submit their entry information for their account login, maybe they submit some information to check out if it's an online store and they need to submit payment information. Either way, as a web developer, you will need to be capturing inputs at some stage, whether that's a search, a checkout, or it's simply a dialogue between you and them as a chat. There's many uses for forms. So we'll be looking over that by starting with an MDM Forms article here. And you'll notice this is a great resource, the Mozilla Developer. Okay, the Mozilla Developer Network, sorry. And that will teach you more about how to use forms across the web. Here you can see that the MDM community is a way you can engage with others and even send out tweets if you're having issues or experiencing things that look wrong and giving feedback to one another. But essentially, we're not asking you to engage with that community network in this assignment. We're actually asking for you to complete this tutorial on MDN. Okay, so through this same network, there's a tutorial called Your First Form. And it really explains that forms are really a place to gather information. We call these things form controls. Sometimes they're called widgets. Okay? The elements of a form can come through text inputs. They can also come through text area inputs and button inputs. And that's as much as we will do with our form. Essentially, we'll be recreating and redesigning this. So your form, if completed, will look like this in digital form. So essentially, this is a completed version of the form. You can see I've actually also added some of that JavaScript we've included to make the form actionable. Okay, you'll notice here it's also prompting me, hey, please include an @ symbol to complete my email address. So if you wanted to capture the name, you'd have to require the user to put in a name. Okay, and if we leave this field blank and we try to send our message, it's telling us, oh, the name was not a required element, but the email is asking for me to include this symbol. So maybe I say crigby@byu.edu or byui.edu. If we send the message, hey, Hello, and thank you for your message. We will get back to you or with you as soon as possible. And that prompt was made possible through a script that we will be using through this tutorial. Essentially, what you want to do is go through here. It explains what the uses are for these elements: form, label, input, text area, and button. The form element needs to have an actionable element, and in this case, a method to post the information. We need to understand in some scenarios it's necessary to get the information from the user, and in other circumstances you may want to be posting that. Okay? Essentially, use get or post for the method attribute, and then the action is defining the location where the form's collected data should be sent when submitted. So we can also declare that here by declaring the attribute action and then assigning it to a value inside these quotations. Essentially, the best way to learn forms is by reading this tutorial and following along. Okay, you'll see we have some form actions, and everything here that's actionable in the form is contained inside this parent form element right here. You'll notice this form is inside of an unordered list. Okay, or I should say the unordered list is nested inside the form. We have, it looks like, 3 listed items in the form. We have a label for the name and an input associated with name. We have another label for email and an input to capture user email. And finally, we have a label for message and then a text area through which we will be writing that. And this is all here. We see label, input, label, email, input, label, message, text area here. And then at the end, you'll have a button that you'll want to submit the information with. So if we scroll on down here, it walks you through how to do the button element. Essentially, it's a listed item, and we assign it a class so that we can style it with CSS later. So essentially, we're going through with HTML, and we're doing some work with the CSS. We recommend you use this information here to style your first form. Okay, you need to style the form by calling on it, and then style the UL, the listed items, the labels, etc. So go through this, and if you want to send the form data to your web server, you need to consider what's the action value and what's the method. And it explains some of that in detail. Essentially, if you go through the tutorial, your live web page for your form, or should say, your form for your web page should look similar to the following. Okay, so we'll be doing this inside of a new file on Glitch. You'll create a new file called forms.html, like this, and you'll add the file. And once you do so, you'll need to make sure you include the basic syntax for a doc type declaration, the HTML, the head, and of course the title for your page. And then below that, we'll have some internal styling done. And much of this is given to you in the tutorial. Make sure you target the necessary components of form, UL, and then all the labels. You'll notice we're displaying those with inline block. We've got some width 90 pixels. And if we ever want to change these by previewing it next to the code, it's pretty simple. Let's see if we can do that. Okay, if we want to just say the width for a label and say it's 120 pixels, okay, all that's doing is saying, wait, we've just expanded the width for the labels, and we could shrink those, we could expand those, okay? So essentially the CSS we give you will work to duplicate the example, but you're welcome to customize it further and change it up. So use some of the CSS to get a good grasp and feel for the form, and to style it, use some of these given properties. Down below, okay, make sure you close your style tag. This is essentially internal styling. In the past, we've done it externally through a separate CSS file, like SitePlan CSS and styles.css. But coming back to forms, essentially what we want to do is make sure everything's marked up here. So I've included a body element. You'll notice this is all we have. Okay, everything you see here is marked up here in the HTML. So follow the tutorial. You're welcome to look at mine here in the screencast and pause it to double check your work. And essentially the last step you'll do once you put in your form is including a feedback styling and a script, okay, for that form element. Whoops, we went a little too far. There's also this script we've included. And if you include this script associated with the feedback ID, you should have an actionable message pop up once you submit the form. Make sure you also include this empty div ID feedback element. And just to make you aware, where is that placed? Okay, to walk through the order of things, we've got our doc type declaration in the head. We then have our internal styling here, and that goes through all the way here. I then opened up a body element, and then I opened up a div ID feedback. And again, this ID feedback is coordinating nicely with this script, okay? The get element by ID feedback. So this script is communicating with this div, and that's why you see my thank you message popping up after I submit my form. So again, to check it out, I have to declare forms.html in a separate tab. And that's what I'm looking at, okay? My forms.html file. This is how I preview it. If I want to send a message, I could say something like hello world in this message text box. Like so, hello world. And if I send my message, if I'm doing this properly, I'm earning, is it up to 6 points for the completion here of the HTML and CSS? And then you get up to 4 points if this is broadcasting correctly. So please, in order for me to assess this properly, you need to preview your page. Make sure you're getting a thank you message right here in this empty feedback div. That's where it should pop up. Not below, but above. Okay? If we were to reposition that, we could. Okay, I'm not wanting you to, but just to show you how it works, if we reposition that div below the script, okay, let's put it down here. Let's see if that changes. Okay, let's see if it changes where it's showing up. You can experiment with this too to get a better feel for it. Let's repeat the same message, hello world, but we'll misspell it with a W. Okay, and you'll see here, oh no, what's going on? It's giving me an issue. It's not processing the form. Okay, send message, send message. It's not working through. So what we need to do is, if we're declaring the script to look at the get element by ID feedback, and it's looking for feedback and the script is not written after the div, it's encountering some issues. Okay, so I hope you see that. Let's put it back where it should be. Let's come up here. Do we have our div ID? No, it's gone. Let's paste it back. Let's go grab it. Okay, this div ID feedback, we want to copy that. And we need to make sure it is right here at the top of our body before our form is actioned and listed and closed. We then follow that with a script. And then we close the script, we close the body, we close the HTML. And again, we need to actually preview it. Hello world, send the message, and yes, it's working again. So make sure, the order does matter. You need to make sure you're doing everything in the right order. So declarations, internal styling, and then we close the internal styling. We open the body. We open the empty div for future feedback to work with our JavaScript. And then essentially in the body, we're going to include all these form elements, okay? The button, the message, the email, and the name. If you have questions, please reach out to me. Essentially, you do need to share this properly, so I'd ask that you share this, okay? Copy this, and then essentially what you want to do is preview this in a new tab before you share it with me. Let's see if it's pulling up my form properly. No, it's not. So what we need to do is make sure we're actually sharing the right URL. So if I come back here, let's go copy this one. Let's preview forms.html. Let's copy this, okay? Let's close it. Let's come back. Let's paste it in a new tab. There it is, okay? So this is what you will be submitting for me. Okay, please submit this. If you'd like to as well, you could preview with the message here. Hello world, send the message. Okay, copy that. And that's what you will submit here to Canvas. So again, look at the rubric, publish your site, make sure you're submitting the correct URL, and then move on to your personal website. And what follows here is just continuing by building your personal website using your wireframe. Okay? Continue for pages 2 and 3, the child pages. And what I'll be doing is evaluating your personal website like so. Are you properly linking to the site plan in the footer of all 3 pages? Is the home page created? And all the content in your wireframe is included. And then essentially do a subpage 1, subpage 2, and then essentially publish your site so I can evaluate it. Good luck. Let me know if you have questions, and I look forward to seeing your work.